Have you ever been on a walk with someone and at the end of it, you're like, wow, I didn't know this about them at all? Well, that is the point of Walk and Talk, a podcast where we walk and talk about their lives, their stories, and what makes them them. So join me and my guest every week as I walk and talk with a different person, getting to know them.
Let's not waste time, we'll take this slow. We've got miles behind us, but miles to go. So let's just break this down to the simplest truth.
Today on Walk and Talk, we have Isaiah Andrews, the young adults pastor from Turning Point Community Church. So Isaiah, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first off, thanks for having me on, man. I think this is a amazing kind of podcast idea. I'm going to get my steps in today for sure.
Yes.
Thankful for that. I know my wife will be thankful for that. But yeah, I'm originally from Long Beach, California, born and raised there from 0 to 18. When I turned 18, I got a football scholarship that led me to South Dakota, where I eventually met my now wife. Played football there for a couple of years. And then just decided like football wasn't for me. It wasn't my first love by any stretch of the imagination. I was just good at it. And so anytime someone gives you free money for school, you take it.
Yes.
So did that for a couple of years and then ended up dropping out of college, worked there for some odd years, met my wife, had our kids there, then ended up going back to school for accounting. I did accounting work for a couple of years. And then when 2020 hit, I had lost my job as an accountant. And I just so happened to be working for a church kind of behind the scenes as like an elder, but then helping with kind of social media and discipleship and all that good stuff. And one of my fellow elders that I was serving with went to the senior pastor and just said, hey, if the church is willing to pay for half of Isaiah's salary, I'll personally pay for the other half. And so that started my journey into full-time ministry. Yeah. So pastored at that church for a few years and then the opportunity to come to Lubbock and join Turning Point Community Church's staff was presented. Me and my wife, we came and visited, got to see the church, the people, got to see Lubbock. It doesn't have as many trees as South Dakota does, but we came to just love the town and the people and the church. And so then made the decision to come here in December of 2021. And I've been here ever since.
All right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I didn't know you played football. I know you talked about you played at college.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What college?
So it was Black Hills State. It was a small NAIA college there. Played running back for a couple of years. Was quick, shifty, but didn't like getting hit. And then one practice, I just got tackled the wrong way, came down on my shoulder. They wanted me to do surgery. I'm just not a fan of that. And so knowing that I did not love football as much as other people, I just decided to opt out and didn't play football anymore.
All right. Well, I don't know anybody that likes getting hit unless they're a linebacker.
Hey, there's a couple of guys out there who don't mind it.
Yeah.
I wasn't one of them.
Well, that's awesome. So you met your wife at college, you said? Or
Yeah. So funny story. We had the same English class together our freshman year. I didn't know this until after a couple of years later when I met her. Unfortunately, she sat next to a girl that I do remember her sitting next to. So that obviously that conversation didn't go well when I remembered the girl she was sitting next to and not her in the class. But yeah, we had a class together. And then I think it was like a year later, we ended up meeting through mutual friends and started our relationship there. Now that's another interesting backstory because most people don't know that like our relationship didn't start off on the right foot.
Oh.
And so I was 19 years old. All I ever knew was sports and girls, and I was confident in playing both of them, unfortunately.
Okay.
My wife, her dad had passed away when she was 16 years old. And so when I met her at 19, she had been into drugs and alcohol really heavy. And so you put, this egotistical, athlete who's full of himself in the same path as a young lady who's struggling with coping with the death of her father and using drugs and alcohol as an outlet, put those two together and it's just a disaster. And so that started 5.5 years of just a really toxic relationship. Yeah.
Well, you couldn't tell
from seeing you guys interact now.
Oh, that's amazing what God can do.
Yes, it is. He knew you guys needed each other.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, like I often tell people, specifically with my wife, like I wouldn't be half the man I am today if I didn't have her in my life, her pushing me, challenging me, showing me that I could be more than I was. And then also being able to bring in, we got 4 beautiful children, and she's been able to bless me with that and give me a different perspective on life and the ability to be a father, something that I didn't have growing up. And so, she's blessed my life tremendously.
That's awesome. So you got 4 kids?
Yep. So we got our oldest, who's 12 years old. Her name's Zariah. Our second is Mazani. She is 10. And then we have 2 younger sons, Sovereign, he is 7. And then Juju, his name's Honor, but we call him Juju. He is 5 years old.
Okay. You got a good little
Yeah.
app there.
Every 2 years, we figured we needed to add to the family. So,
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I've got a 15-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So,
ooh, oh man, yeah, you got a wide range.
yeah.
I'm just learning the wonders of having a preteen and all of the beautiful challenges that come along with them thinking you're a complete idiot. So
Oh, yeah.
that's been a fun journey for sure.
Yeah. And it gets easier as they get a little older.
Okay.
They kind of like, our 15-year-old's very independent, but at the same time, she's not.
Yeah.
But she does whatever she needs to do. You don't really have to get on to them anymore.
Okay.
And then the bad thing is you forget to check on them.
Oh, okay.
Because they hide in your room and then they pop out, they do what they need to do.
Yep.
And you're just like, oh yeah, are you doing all right? Do you need anything?
Yeah, no kidding.
Because they're so independent, but yet they still need you.
Yeah.
You just forget. And then you got a 3-year-old who needs everything.
No, 100%. I do not miss those days.
And my son, he's the only boy, even on his dad's side, he has 2 other sisters over there.
Oh, wow.
He's got 4 sisters, and he's always like, can we just have a brother? And I'm like, no, we're done. Sorry. I'm like, ask your dad if he wants another one.
That's funny.
And it's rough, but he's such a good older brother to his younger ones and to his older sister. Like,
That's awesome.
and
Yeah, he'll probably end up being the protector of the family.
yes, and it's just fun to watch like girls interact with each other. I don't know.
Oh man, for our girls, it's funny watching them interact because on one level they're like the best of friends, and then on another level they're like the worst of enemies. And so it's like it's a flip of a coin. You never know what you're gonna get that day.
Yeah.
Are you gonna have to break up fights, or are you gonna have to allow them to have sleepovers together? So it's a very interesting dynamic.
And see, like our 3-year-old and our 15, like from day one, they didn't get along. Now they do. Like,
Okay.
she'll go watch the iPad in her sister's bed.
Oh, wow.
It's fun now, but like the sisters, it's interesting. Like, I only had brothers,
Okay.
and so raising a daughter on top of like not being around girls in the family, it's just interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then watching the dynamics, and you're like, I kind of like having a brother better.
Yeah, no kidding. For me, it was like, it's interesting because like I feel like it was harder for me with my boys than it was for my girls, because I grew up in a household, single mom, and I had my sister. And so just a female dominated home. So you just learn how to navigate women for that matter. So then having my boys, it was just like, who are these little minions who just want to fight and then want to hang on you and use you as a jungle gym? Like, how do I navigate this? How do I have conversations with them? And then the misconception of like, you have to be extremely hard on your boys versus being with your girls. And it's like, no, there's a level of toughness that obviously you want to build in your boys and resilience, but you don't have to tear them down in order to build that up. And you don't have to minimize, their feelings or their pain just to make them tough. And that was something that was hard for me to navigate and learn. But by the grace of God and failures along the way, I'm getting better at it. I'm not perfect by any means, but I'm slowly getting better at it.
And you're not alone on that. It's tough. And I think even my dad kind of struggles with it today, like, especially with his grandkids.
Gotcha.
It's so fun to watch him with, because he used to be the strict guy.
Yep.
And then you watch him with the kids and they just walk all over him. But they do.
Yeah, yeah. And you wonder, like, where was that when I was a kid?
And then you're just like, with your own kid, like the girls, kind of let Lauren, my wife, do it, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll be there to like listen. But I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard stuff that they gotta learn.
No,
Boys, it's like, no, you're a boy. Do this.
yeah, and it's unfortunate too, because like when it comes to parenting, there is no how-to manual,
Right.
and so like a lot of the times you don't feel like you're doing a good job, or even a good enough job for that matter. But in reality, it's like if you can learn to listen, like you're saying, seek understanding, and not rule as like this heavy-fisted authoritarian, I think it goes a lot better. Not to say that there isn't any discipline or there isn't any correction, but like that's one of the things that I've had to learn, because for me it's easy to lead with an iron fist. Like,
Yes.
I told you to do it, so you do it. Not, hey, this is why I'm telling you to do it, and this is the benefit of doing that. And so I'm like learning that, because even our relationship with the Lord, like He gives us understanding, and we're allowed to ask questions without being beat down for it. And so for me to model that for my children is something that I'm trying to do. I'm not good at it just because of the way that I was raised, and like this sense of, like I said, ruling with an iron fist. But I've learned when I lean more into that of, I'm going to tell you what to do, but why to do it and the benefits of it, it goes a whole heck of a lot smoother.
So do you think, because listening to you talk, I'm like, oh yeah, I do that with my kids. Like, don't ask why, just do.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, we ask God.
Yeah.
But do you think it relates to sports? Because, when a coach tells you to do something, you don't look at them and go, why?
Yeah, no, for sure.
So we're raised, like, as much as we don't want to admit it, we're basically in school all day.
Yeah.
And then sports, yeah, that's your life.
Yeah.
And so coaches really have an impact on you, positive, negative, both sometimes, where we take that don't ask why.
No, for sure. And I can see that too, like in my own growing up in like sports, but just school in general. Like I feel like you spend the majority of your life having adults tell you what to do, and not always the why behind it.
Yes.
So that it becomes more monotonous, or there becomes a sense of rebellion of like, I don't want to do that because you haven't given me a good enough reason. And I think that's where we find a lot of our misconceptions, or our conflict is like, there's no sense of, hey, let's get on the same page. Let's seek understanding before we seek agreement. It's always, I need you to do this, or you're going to do this because of that, or because I said so, versus, hey, let's talk through this, and let's get on the same page and understanding, because we'll go further if we have understanding versus just arbitrarily submitting to something because you don't want conflict.
Yeah. And like when I was teaching, I taught history.
Okay.
Of course, I was
One of my favorite subjects.
History is so amazing. It relates to everything. But my students, during election time, we'd always talk about it because it's a life event. They may not be old enough to vote, but they need to understand the process.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that they always asked was, like, who do I support? And I'm like, no, we're not going to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I like to tell them, and we have discussions about it, is when you pick a candidate, you don't pick based off of the party, and you pick off of their policies.
Yeah.
And tell me why you vote for them.
Yeah.
And so we'll sit in discussion, and I'm not trying to sway them anyway, because that's not my job. My job is just to teach them how to get the information and relate it back to their life.
Yeah.
How does that affect them? And so my kids would come in class like, hey, did you hear this and this and this? And I'm like, yeah, well, why is that important to you?
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of communication. How you said, we expect them just to listen and do it. But if you explain why we're doing it, the reason behind, they come so far.
Yeah. Or even helping them find their value system.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what are the things you value? It's one thing to, like I said, in that situation, to vote based off of popularity, or vote based off of what everybody else is doing, or just consensus. But like, do those things match your values? Right? When you talk about policies, do you value the things that this candidate is bringing? And I think it translates outside of just politics, for that matter, like in life in general. The people you surround yourself with, I mean, do they share the same values? The things that you're pursuing, is it something that you actually value, or something that you feel like you have to do it because someone told you to? And so I think, as you're saying, like helping people find their value systems helps alleviate a lot of the problems that we have going on, for sure.
Yes. And I love my grandma. She was crazy in her own way.
Okay.
She one time told me, I vote just on how they look.
Oh, wow.
And so I always remember that.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted my students to know, like, no, don't base your whole life on how somebody looks.
Yeah.
Know them and then make a decision.
No, for sure. But is that not life though? Like, the fact that we can make a lot of our determinations and decisions based off of appearances,
Yes.
right? Like, oh man, that looks like the right thing to do, so I'm going to do it. Regardless of like if it is, sometimes we just get caught up in the attractiveness of something versus doing the deep dive and understanding like what is actually going on behind the scenes.
Yes. You ever watch Love is Blind on Netflix?
I haven't, but I think my wife has.
Okay.
That's a very, I think I've caught like maybe a glimpse of it. But isn't that the same concept where people like fall in love and they don't see each other and then they see each other and it changes the dynamic?
Yeah. So I watched it and then I got Lauren hooked on it. So
nice.
Now we're hooked on it together.
Okay. So you're the hopeless romantic in the relationship?
Yes and no. Yeah. I just had more free time. I was a teenager.
There you go.
And you know, you got lots of free time in the summer.
Yeah.
And so I was watching it and I was like, oh, Lauren will love it. And it's like so interesting to watch it.
Okay.
And watch them connect. And also, me and my wife like it because we met through Tinder.
Okay.
And at first, my wife was kind of hesitant to say it because, you know, Tinder had this bad rep.
No, for sure. Yeah.
And it just so happened my brother he lived in Lubbock and he was a manager at Cujo's. And I would come over because I was single and had teacher money, cooking money.
Yeah.
And just so happened I picked up, we swiped. And so we met through talking. So we kind of relate to the show because I don't think we went on a date for probably 6 months.
Wow. So a lot of your interactions or your knowing one another was through just your communication.
Yes. And she hates that I say this, but just because it seems weird, but I kind of fell in love with her through communicating.
And
then
I got a question on that.
Yes.
Do you feel like your communication has grown since then? Or do you feel like it's decreased? And what I mean by that is like your relationship was built off of your ability to communicate.
Yes.
And that's one of the like leading causes of conflicts within relationship is the inability to communicate. So do you feel like that's something that has continued to grow, or do you feel like you guys have plateaued in that?
Both.
Okay.
So it's interesting. I like texting, and it was easier to text because you kind of hid behind that, open up.
Yep.
And then, but on like a work side, it's got to be in person. I got to talk to you.
Yep.
So with her, it was easy to communicate with her.
Okay.
And one thing, I'd send a message and then she'd leave me on red for a couple, maybe 30 minutes, an hour.
Yeah.
She kept me going. And then once we started dating, we didn't live in the same city for a year.
Okay. Whoa. A year.
Yes.
Okay.
So I would come over on the weekends and we'd see each other then. And so the communication wasn't really deep anymore.
Okay.
It was, but it wasn't, you know.
Yeah.
It was, we just were so happy to see each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't really talk about like we used to.
Gotcha.
And then once I moved over here, conflict, it was different. Like it was hard to adjust to living together.
Yeah.
And on top of that, she had 2 kids.
Okay.
And so it was a big adjustment from me living in a travel trailer single, going to live with my fiance and her 2 kids.
Yeah.
So it's like navigating that, and then also my job and the communication. Yeah, it did. But now I think we've kind of matured in that.
Okay.
She always said she wanted to have a fight, like when we first started dating.
Okay.
Just to see how we fought. And
Yeah.
I'm like, it's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
So you're trying to make me mad is what you're saying?
Oh, she did. She did. And I'm glad she did, though, because it is right. You need to see how you each other handle conflict.
No,
You
for
can
sure.
grow from it. But yeah, communication, I feel like in a marriage, it goes up and down.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I get that. Like even, so me and my wife just celebrated 9 years married and
Congrats.
oh, thank you. Appreciate it. And we're still trying to find ways to grow in our communication. And even like being together, you know, almost a decade, you would think, oh, there's some things that you guys just don't have to communicate. But even to this day, like we still have to communicate because throughout the course of our relationship together, we've evolved, we've changed, we've had different preferences before now than we had before. And so like learning to communicate and how to communicate has been definitely a challenge. And I think the side of it of, you know, when you first start dating, there's this desire to discover, right? Like, man, I want to know about you and I want to know why you do this and why you do that and what do you like? And and I want to fulfill those needs and desires, so to speak. And then you're together, and I don't know if it's just familiarity, but you kind of lose that. Like, well, I just know who this person is. And it's not true because, again, like I said, throughout the course of your time together, you're going to change. You have different preferences. And so I'm trying to find that sense of discovery again with my wife in that regard. And communication is a big part of it.
Yes. Well, we went through a little rough patch. So I was in education and I was working I always wanted to coach, I thought.
Okay.
And I got to Wilson. I was just the head boys basketball coach with assistant football. And the coach retired and left me as the AD, head football coach, head basketball coach, head everything, basically. And so my communication with her kind of stumbled upon that as I was working more. And then at the end of 1 year, they let me go. But I still got to stay on at Wilson. It was a whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I was still at Wilson in December. Like, I stayed there for 7 years, but I kind of got in a depression.
Okay.
Because my whole life, that was what I wanted to be. Like, that was the top of making it. And so
do you feel like you found your identity in those kind of positions?
Yes.
Okay.
And I thought that's where God wanted me to be.
Yeah.
And so luckily Lauren just kept pushing and pushing, like, to stay.
Yeah.
And keep me. And then COVID hit. And as a teacher, like, we had nothing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, love is blind, right?
Yeah. And so, like, it really hit. And finally one day, she's like, why are you depressed? And I was like, because I lost everything. She's like, you didn't lose us. And so it really hit me. And then not only that, my relationship with God had stopped.
Yeah.
Like, I got the job I wanted and I didn't give him the praise. I didn't give him the lead.
Yeah.
So, and then when I look back on it now, I'm like, oh, I just trusted God. Like, how much easier would my life have been during that year?
Yeah.
Because it was hard. It was political. It was everything. And so
I have a question because I'm trying to navigate this in my own life. Why do you feel, and I'm not saying this is for all men, but why do you feel that us as men tend to find, like, our worth and meaning in the things we do versus the people we're around? Because you said, man, I lost everything. But is your wife reminding you that you didn't lose her and you didn't lose the kids? Like, where it felt like all of the eggs were in the basket of, the job versus, like, in the family aspect of it.
I think it goes back to the beginning. Like, well, not the beginning, maybe all when we got kicked out of Eden, God said, go work.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of who, like, maybe it's put into our system of, we got to work.
Yeah.
That's how we value it. And I think it also goes to society, what they tell us.
Yeah.
And now there's a little movement of you don't have to, women are allowed to work and be the provider.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, like, I always tell my wife, I'm like, I love you. If you want to go out and work and make more money than me, please. Yeah. Don't do it. Like, I'm all aboard. But then a little part of you is like, am I all aboard?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's really society of, I mean, think about all the movies we watched as a kid.
No, for sure.
Like, even Disney movies. I was watching or listening and thinking about Snow White and Cinderella because my 3-year-old loves princess songs.
Okay.
And she's talking about, in the song, she's talking about meeting this amazing guy. He's got every.
Yeah.
And so it's like right there, it's like, wait, no, why is that built into us? And we don't see it. We see it as a love story, but they always rely on the man.
Yeah.
And so I think it's part of society. I think that God also said, go work. And so I think we took it as, that's all we got to do.
Yeah.
But we forget, he said, you got to love your wife. You got to honor your family.
Yeah.
And, who did the sermon? I can't remember. It wasn't Pastor Chuck, though. Rusty.
Okay.
He talked about when kids grow up, are your kids turds?
Oh, yeah.
And he wasn't talking about your kids. He was talking about parents.
Yeah.
Like, are you allowing them to be turds?
Yeah.
And so I think it goes back to, as men, we feel like, oh, we got to be competitive. We got to find this job that means so much.
Yeah.
And then it's our wives. Thankfully, God gave us amazing women to be in our lives and remind us, no, it's not.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I answered your question.
No, for sure. I think you hit right on it. Because again, like I said, it's something that I'm even navigating in my own life, right? Like, being a pastor doesn't make me immune to that struggle as well. And, like, I found for me, the tension has been I can gauge success a whole heck of a lot easier in my work than I can my family.
Yes.
So like I can check the box at work, or I can go, oh man, got that task accomplished, or man, we just did this big event and God blessed it, versus, in the home of, man, are me and my wife on the same page? Are we moving in the same direction? Do we value the same things? Are my kids, do my kids feel loved by me? Do they feel appreciated by me? Like, it's a lot harder to gauge that. And I don't get to control that.
Yeah.
Right. Like I can control the effort that I put into it, but as far as how they feel, I can't control that. And so I think it's easier for me to hide behind work and find success in work than it is to, in the family side of it.
Yes. And I think it goes to, like, we're competitive as men.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Me and my brother are very competitive. Like, even up in the calls, a quarter of an inch.
You won that?
Yes. But I think it goes to that. And then, like you said, like, when you go home, I think, even I struggle with it. Like, at work, you get this respect.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you go home and your kids, they don't mean to, but they do something. And you're like, no, that's not. Or they choose their mom over you. And so it kind of, like, well, what is, where's dad?
Yeah.
And so I think it goes, like, I struggle with that all the time. Like, it's hard to find that balance of, why am I needing my work to define me?
Mm-hmm.
And that's also why I wanted to do Walk and Talk with you, because you are more than just a pastor.
Yeah.
And that's why I love you and Pastor Chuck and all the preachers, because when I was growing up, we didn't have a preacher stand up there and talk about their own life.
Yeah.
Go this way. And so hearing you guys talk about your struggles, it kind of made it like, they're no different than me.
Yeah.
And so it makes it easier to relate. When Chuck is talking about I think it was his daughter who had the kidney.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't have my kids any issues like that, but like hearing him struggle and as a person just singing church, and you're like, oh
yeah,
he's human. It's like you watch The Chosen.
Yep.
I don't know why, but in my mind it was Jesus. Well, of course it's God, Jesus. And then the disciples were like up there, they walked with them. And then you watch The Chosen and they're just regular people.
Yeah.
You see them struggle with it and you're like, okay, I can relate to this guy.
100%.
And so I think even they struggled with it.
Yeah.
There's that episode in, I think, season 1, Simon goes into struggling to tell his wife that he doesn't have the money.
Yep, that he's indebted.
And I think that's kind of how we feel. Like, like I was miserable at Wilson. I thought I wanted to be in education, and then 2 years ago, it was just like, it hit me.
Yeah.
Like, I hated going to work. And so, but they kept promoting me.
Yeah.
Like, they gave me athletic director.
You're good at what you hated.
They took it away, but then they gave me technology, and I still got to teach. And then all of a sudden, I was assistant principal.
Wow.
And then I ended up being dean of students. And I'm like, how can I leave this? Like, I know. Then my wife was just like, you're so angry. I'm like, it's because I hate going to work.
Wow.
She's like, then why do you do it? I'm like, because I got to provide. It's my job to provide for the family. How can I look at you and say, you got to raise kids and provide?
Yeah.
And she's like, but you don't have to do that. We're together. And so it's like a struggle. And my dad wasn't that way. Like, he wasn't like, oh, I'm the dad. I mean, he did do the job, and he was just in the military. My mom stayed at home. I think we all went to kindergarten, and then she got a job. And so it's like, I don't know where we get that along the way of, we're the man, we got to provide for the household, even if it makes you so unhappy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the key point is like, what good is it? And Jesus says, what good is it to gain the whole world and lose your soul?
Yeah.
Right. Like, man, you're being promoted, you're making all this money, and on the outside, man, it looks amazing. And this is great. And this is everything we've ever asked for and prayed for. But when I go home, like, it just feels like it's destructive. Like my wife's saying I'm angry or I'm discontented and I'm closed off. And I'm like, even in my own life, do I want to win out here and lose at home? Or do I want to win at home and, to the world's perspective, lose out here? Like, honestly, I think for me, I'm learning the value of family more than anything in this season of my life. Of like, man, I love the church that I work for, but like at some point in time, like, I'm not going to be a pastor anymore. And that's not going to be how people identify me. But one thing that will always remain is I will be a father and I'll be a husband. And like, those are the things that I want to prioritize and invest in. And it doesn't mean that I have to quit my job to do that, but it does mean I have to be intentional with the time I have with my family. So
Yes, and we walked back by that the other day too, and it got me. No, I think that's so good because, I mean, I go back to when I was so angry, and my son asked my wife, "Why did you marry him? He's so angry."
wow.
And it's like, wow.
Yeah.
And then God just, you stop and you just let God in. And he took an 8-year-old at the time to break me down.
Yeah.
And I mean, we fought, and thankfully she stuck with me. Like, yeah, because I'm not easy. I'm very hard-headed. And she'll admit to that 100%, just like my dad is, my brothers are. And so once I heard that, I was just like, who am I?
Yeah.
And so I started getting back into church. Like, I went, but I wasn't really into it.
Yeah.
And my wife, thankfully, she kept saying like, "Oh, let's volunteer. Let's get into it."
Yeah. Get plugged in.
And so it happened. Like, he found me again. I found him. And so life started to change. And it's like Pastor Chuck said, it's not going to be just happiness all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's how do you handle it? Where do you go when you're in that darkness?
Yeah.
And thankfully, I've got an amazing family that holds you up. And on my last podcast, it made it sound like I didn't like my wife that much. I love my wife. Okay. I do love her.
A little disclaimer there.
Yes. And it's amazing how you think you're the strong man, and then your wife or your kids humble you.
Yeah.
And it's what you need. And so it makes me happy to know that my kids ask those questions.
Yeah.
And then my wife doesn't hold back, because that's what I need.
Yeah.
I need her to not hold back. Even though she said she likes to wanted to fight when we were dating. Yeah. She hates it now.
Yeah.
But I always tell her, I'm like, I'm glad we fight. Like, I feel always closer to her afterward. And I learned something. So I think it matters that you fight and communicate.
Yeah, because I think that in that sense, you guys are fighting for the same thing, right? And I think it's always better to fight for the same thing versus fighting one another. And I think the more you understand that, like, conflict is not a bad thing because it can help lead to a resolution.
Yes.
And actually deal with the actual issue versus the surface level stuff that just gets tossed around. And so, yeah, like, I think it's healthy to have those courageous conversations, as we call them.
Yeah.
Where I'm not afraid to say what needs to be said, and I'm not afraid to hurt your feelings in this moment, because again, that's not my intention. My intention is to help you, hurt you. And so, no, totally get it.
So yeah, I don't think you're alone in the struggle. I think I struggle. I hope my son doesn't, but he's going to struggle with it.
Yeah.
I think that's just one of the flaws that we're just going to have. And the more we talk about it, I think the easier it can get.
Yeah.
And it's like, I got out of education because God telling me you're out. And
was that an easy transition for you?
It was interesting, but no, I mean, I've been blessed to get out, like, how the transition happened.
Okay.
Like, right now I'm still currently paid until June from Wilson.
Okay.
But I haven't been in since December.
Wow.
So
how do I get signed up for that?
you got to talk to God on that one. Like, there is no reason that this should be happening except for God.
Yeah.
Like, and it's amazing just to watch him. Like, you don't expect him to do amazing things in your life. You know he can.
Yeah.
But to actually see it happen, you're like,
yeah, why me?
Why me?
Yeah.
And so the transition was easy.
Okay.
It's getting a little terrifying now as the June's coming closer.
Yeah.
And it's like testing me a little. But then I watched my wife, who started her own business, didn't wait for things to get in line. Felt God telling her, do it. And watching her become so successful, which I knew she always would, but it's amazing to watch, and she just leans on God.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if she can do it, why can't I do it?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's amazing how, like, I think in some instances we take our wives for granted.
Yes.
But in a lot of ways, they motivate us to be better and to do better. And like, we can see them strive and achieve things and not be jealous, but be like, man, I saw you do it. Like, why can't I do it? And so, no, I get that. That's awesome.
And it goes the same way. Like, she checks me and I try to check her. But not in a bad way. It's, we got to keep each other grounded, because without us, who's going to do it?
Yeah.
And so it's amazing to watch her do it. And then the transition from, I think the biggest change from education to real estate was the freedom. Like, in education, like, you know exactly what you're doing every minute of the workday.
Yeah.
Like, the only thing you don't know is when you're going to go to the bathroom. Like, and that was one of the questions I asked at Keller Williams when I went to interview, is like, 'cause I didn't know anything different about working. Like, it's like, when do you go to the bathroom? Like, they're like, you just go whenever.
Whenever you got to go, I guess.
I'm like, I'm sorry, that sounds like a funny question.
Yeah.
In education, it's, do you get someone to cover your kids in time?
Yeah.
And so that was the biggest switch.
Okay.
And still today, I kind of stumble with it. Like, some days if I wake up, I go take Lauren will either take the older kids or our youngest, because they're opposite directions of the city.
Okay.
And then I'll come home, and if I turn on the TV and start playing the Switch, my day's gone.
Yeah.
And so it's more like, it's kind of like being back in college, but you're not, where your friends playing Call of Duty and you got to go to class. Are you going to stay or go to class?
Yeah.
So thankfully, Lauren will text me and be like, hey, what are you doing today?
Keep you motivated.
And so that's been the biggest adjustment. And then people always ask me, like, oh, is it because real estate's, you're going to get so much money? I'm like, I don't care about the money.
Yeah.
Like, I know God's going to provide no matter what. Like, it's more about what he wants me to do for them.
Yeah.
It's like with this podcast, I hate talking in front of people. Like, my wife is always like, you need to go out and socialize and meet more people. And I'm like, no, I'm good.
Yeah. I'm good in my box. Why I got to do all that? That seems like a lot of work.
So now I'm doing this podcast, not because, I thought it would be a great idea. It's, God told me to do it in November. I fought with him. And then all I can think about in every sermon for the last 3 sermons was this podcast. I mean, the walk and talk, the name came from him.
Yeah.
The idea of walking and talking, like, what are we going to talk about? Came from him. Even explaining it to my wife, she was like, this doesn't make sense. I'm like, I know. It doesn't make sense. And she's like, how's that going to work? I'm like, I don't know. But we're going to do it. And
why do you feel like it took you so long to get on board with kind of the podcast? Because you said you had it in November.
Yes.
Right. And you're wrestling with the Lord in that sense. And like, obviously he won, which he always does.
Yes, he does.
Well, why do you feel like there was such a wrestle with you and even pursuing this?
Because I'm stubborn. And I didn't want to.
Yeah.
And the fear.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing is always the fear of stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
It's funny. You can put me in a classroom, I can talk in front of kids.
Yeah.
You put me in front of an auditorium with parents, I can do it. It's my job.
Yeah.
But going to meet and talk with random people, not that you're random, but
no, for sure. I get it.
But we're not, like,
we don't know each other on that depth.
Yes. Yeah. And so reaching out, it's like, oh, it's just going to sound weird. and then talking about personal stuff, for me, it's like, no. I mean, and so it was the struggle of, well, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I don't like talking, even though my wife says I like to talk. But I don't. Like, I feel like I'm an introvert unless it's my job and I got to talk. Like, at open houses, I'll talk.
Yeah.
Like, I can do that. But this, it's like, I don't know, God, I don't really want to do it. And not only that, like, the time that goes into it, it's like, how do you manage it? And then part of it was we went on vacation, and then I just got sidetracked with something else, and then God kept putting it. Like, and so finally, I was just like, man, I haven't been happy in a while for a little bit. Like, I'm happy, but feels like something's missing.
Yeah.
And sitting in church, and there it is in the back of my mind. Like, not only that, like, I came up with the logo in church.
Really?
It was just there.
So instead of listening to a sermon, you're creating your own logo.
Yeah. Yes. I'm not
that's
gonna,
awesome.
like,
That's
yes.
awesome.
And so it's like, I did this last week, actually.
Okay.
Put the logo on, researched how to do a podcast, and, well, none of them said go on a walk outside. But that's it. I think that's why God wanted me to do it,
Yeah.
because I've done 2 episodes already. this week, and just I was listening to the first episode that I was editing last night, listening to them talk. Like there's things in there that I'm like hearing, and I'm like, oh, that's me.
Yeah.
And so it's helped me along the way. But I also want to share your story.
Yeah.
Of how you say you're more than Pastor Isaiah. Well, you are.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it's going to pick up and take off and be Joe Rogan's status, but
Yeah.
if it gets out there and one person hears your struggle, then I know God did it for a reason.
Yeah. No, for sure.
So
That's awesome.
it's the struggle is always going to be, do I want to do this? And then it feels, I don't know why I get this in my mind. It feels weird for like, if I know somebody, kind of know them,
Okay.
like I interact with you a little in a public space, to message you and ask you a question. In my mind, I'm thinking, oh, he's just talking to me.
Because I'm in that space.
And then I thought, oh, Isaiah's just going to think I'm trying to talk to him because I want him on my podcast.
Gotcha.
And so I don't know where that mindset of mine came from of like talking to people and then asking them for something.
Yeah.
Feels like, oh, I'm going to be a burden on them.
Yeah. And I think that's human nature. I think anytime we ask someone to do something for us, it almost feels like either we owe them or we don't want them to feel like they owe us. We don't want them to think that it's for our own selfish gain. And like, what are they going to say? What if they say no? Then what if they look at me weird because I asked them this? And I think that's just human nature. I think we all struggle with that and all have to navigate that. But I think the biggest thing for you, and I'm seeing it just in this episode alone, is like, man, God has given you something that he's entrusted you with that I think is going to be phenomenal in so many different ways. And it's just outside of the box. And so like, I've learned in my own life, I'd rather be faithful to God than worry about what other people are going to say about it. Right. Like,
Yes.
there's just a different level of like, I don't want to say disappointment, but like, I'm just at a stage in my life where I just want to be honoring to God.
Yeah.
That makes me have to step out of my shell or makes people look at me different or weird. Like, so be it. Like, that's the price that comes with it. Cause I always just want to be obedient. And you're seeing the fruit of like being obedient. You're out of the house, you're walking, you're meeting new people, you're getting to hear their story. And so, man, continue to press in because it's only going to get that much better.
Thank you. Yeah. It's been fun. Like my wife always jokes because ever since not working at Wilson, like I have trouble sleeping because I'm not doing as much.
Yeah.
So I told her Sunday, I was like, I'm doing stuff this week. She's like, I didn't mean to do it all in 2 days. I'm like, hey, that's just how I'm happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's been fun. Like with you, I know a little about you. I tried to research you on Facebook and Instagram, but
Good luck.
I was able to pick up a few things on Instagram.
Yeah.
But it's been refreshing and interesting to learn something about you outside of there's a day on the stage.
Yeah.
Telling us what's coming up.
Yeah.
So it's been fun. Like I knew you played football. I didn't know you played for college.
Yeah.
Instagram kind of told me about California, South Dakota, and then here. It's funny because I don't even remember when you got to church. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah. Like I just remember sitting in and all of a sudden you're on stage. I'm like, yeah, when did we get this guy?
Yeah, that was interesting. I remember, so like I said, I came in December of 21, like literally came a couple days before my birthday.
Oh,
And so I got to experience Turning Point 1 week. And then the very next week I was on stage. And that was like a really interesting transition because I felt like I didn't really know too much about the church. And yet I was put in a position to communicate as though I did. And so I'll never forget, I was doing the prayer moment and I was setting it up and I just said, you know, here at Turning Point, we believe in the power of prayer. And the moment I said it, I was like, in my mind, do we believe in the power of prayer?
yeah.
So it was just like an awkward feeling of like, oh, I really hope we do because I just made a statement for all of us. And that's like more of an individual statement. Now, by the grace of God, obviously, we do believe in the power of prayer. And so God had my back in that. But yeah, it was coming in was a culture shock. I mean, moving to Lubbock, Texas, moving to the South for that matter. One of the things that we didn't realize is that Southern hospitality is real. Like people genuinely care about you and people genuinely want to see the best for you and want to stick out their helping hand for you. And so for us, coming from South Dakota, where my wife's from, I was just a little different because the context and culture is there is different. And then coming to a space where Christianity, for the most part, is celebrated and everyone's a Christian was odd for us because in South Dakota, it's the opposite, where if you say that you're a Christian, people look at you weird. Here, if you say that you're not a Christian, people look at you weird. And so just learning those different dynamics was challenging. I mean, we've been here for 2 years now and are still learning and praise God for, the seasons that he's brought us through. And we've come to just enjoy our time here and love the people along the way. And so, yeah, but definitely I felt like I got here and then the next week I'm on the stage and I'm fully in and I'm like trying to figure it out on the go.
So, okay. If you could go back and redo it, would you change how you first got here?
I think the thing that I would have done is just a little bit more research on the church as a whole, but then also like Lubbock as a whole. I think like, you can look up stuff, you can have conversations with different people. And I don't think I did enough of that to get a better grasp of, what does it mean to live in Lubbock and what is the culture and where are the places that you go to eat and where are the places you go to hang out and what are the best coffee shops? I think doing that research. And then one of the unfortunate things that we did when we first got here, and I think it was more of like a defense mechanism or for protection. So leaving South Dakota and leaving our church that we were at, we had to leave a lot of those relationships, right? And so that was really hard. We had developed really strong relationships and deep-rooted relationships, and then all of a sudden, you're leaving.
Yeah.
And so when we got here, we made the fatal mistake of saying like, well, we don't know how long we're going to be here, so we don't want to try to make those relationships and then have to like leave again. And so we're just kind of traumatized from the first leading. But what that ended up doing was created this year-long kind of journey where we didn't have any connections, or we didn't know anybody and people didn't know us, and we didn't try to know people, and we didn't give people the opportunity to know us. And this just being in church, like community is everything.
Yeah.
Like being able to go over someone's house and share a meal and talk about life and talk about marriage and just navigate parenting and all those cool things that come along with community, we didn't have for a year. And so it made being in Lubbock extremely hard, but it made us very disconnected, and that was our own doing. And then after that year, I remember it was January, and I just looked at my wife and I said, regardless of how long we're here, we can't do another year like that. Like we've got to make friends and we've got to get plugged in and we got to understand, what is Lubbock and what do they value? And so we made it a point in 2023 just to dive all the way in, and it's been beneficial and it's been great. And obviously our experience with Lubbock is significantly different because we're actually a part of the city and a part of the community versus being on the outside looking in.
Well, I can relate as my family was a military family.
Okay. I was around a lot.
Yeah, I was born in Florida.
Okay.
Homestead. Don't even know what it looks like. We moved when I was 2.
Okay.
Went to Idaho.
Oh, wow. Florida to Idaho.
Yes, and we drove.
Oh,
in the van.
Goodness gracious.
And
how long of a trip was that?
Luckily, I don't remember because I was only 2, but
okay.
My brothers tell me it was the worst drive.
Golly.
And we had a dog and a cat in the van.
Oh, man.
But yeah, we went to Idaho, which I remember a little bit.
Okay.
But I always remember how, looking back, like how lucky I was because I always had my brothers.
Okay.
How you were talking about, you don't know how long you're going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for me, I always had my brothers to build that community. Even my wife talks about it now. Like you don't have any male friends. Like, I'm like, well, I have so-and-so's husband. She's like, no, that's my friend. I'm like, well, I don't need it. I have my brother.
Yeah.
And it's hard to explain. Like when you move somewhere, it is hard to let down the barriers and let people in, especially when you move to a military base.
Yeah.
Because not only are you moving, but they're going to move.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how do you make that friendship? And so I think a little part of me, that's where the wall kind of goes up. And then finally we moved from Idaho to Colorado, Air Force Academy.
Okay.
My favorite place. Like our backyard was a hill. Like,
oh, wow.
Just the woods. And,
oh, geez.
And
kid's dream.
Yes. I mean, our first night there, we didn't do the bungee cord or something on the trash can.
Okay.
A bear. We woke up because a bear.
Oh my goodness.
And so like, it was just we wake up and there's just a bear and you're like, oh, welcome to Colorado. And so it was the best time. Air Force Academy was amazing. And then we come to Clovis, New Mexico.
Oof. Okay.
I had never seen a cow. Like, you like talk about a cow.
Yeah. You eat a cow.
Yeah. And then I saw a cow and I was like, what is that? And then we were looking for a house because my mom and dad decided they're not going to live on the base this time.
Okay.
And so we drove across the border to Farwell, which is kind of New Mexico. It's like right there.
Okay.
And I remember thinking, like, someone told me that the ocean is at the bottom of Texas. Well, we're driving in a neighborhood kind of like this, but at the edge of it was this big field
Okay.
of like corn. Well, it wasn't in season, so, and we're kind of elevated over it. And I'm talking, it goes on for, it was probably 500 acres.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh, that's the ocean. And like, we're getting closer to it. And then it's just dirt.
Oh,
And I was like,
that's not the ocean.
so it was a big shock coming to New Mexico from Colorado.
Yep.
But my dad retired in Clovis, and then we moved to House, New Mexico.
Okay.
Where it is the smallest town you can think of.
Oh, wow.
I graduated with 5 kids,
What?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
and I wouldn't change it for anything. I still talk to one of them.
Okay.
He was in my wedding. It's crazy to see him evolve. And then, but we just did everything. And the biggest shock was going to college, because in House, there was no gas station. There was no restaurants. Like, you had to drive an hour to get anywhere.
Oh, my goodness.
And so you get to college and you're like, I can go to Taco Bell at 2 a.m. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And then it kind of like making the connections out in college with friends. It didn't happen. I thought I knew I wanted to be a teacher and a coach. I poured into that. Like, that's all I did. I got a job with my dad right out of high school.
Okay.
And during college, I didn't go to the mixers or
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't want to. I wanted to get in and out.
Yeah.
And now looking back, I'm like, what did I miss? Like, I missed that connection. But then it's like, why didn't I want that connection? I always had my brothers.
Mm.
And so even to this day, it's like, I got my brothers. One lives in Denver City.
Okay.
The other one's living in Wolfworth. And then the third one's off in New Mexico still, but still.
Gotcha.
But it's like, they're here.
Yeah.
And so it's like, do I need that connection? I've got them.
Yeah.
No matter what, I've got them.
Yeah.
And so I think it kind of goes back to why I struggled with starting the podcast. Like,
Yeah, I'm surprised your first few episodes weren't your brothers.
God told me who to go with. I'm not joking.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never had it like this, but he told me and you're going to be my first episode. Don't know why.
Oh, wow.
And then Stace Jones.
Okay.
I don't know if you know who.
Yep.
And then Lee McClure.
Okay.
And this. Oh wait, we gotta go this way. Sorry. Yes.
Go ahead.
And the fourth one is Valerie. He didn't tell me the fourth one.
Okay.
Well, he kind of did, but my wife told me no.
Okay.
Pastor Chuck.
Gotcha.
She's like, no, you can't do 2 pastors so close together.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, but they're so different.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%. Which is, man, I'm going to shout him out just a little bit. So he's one of the primary reasons why I even took the job. I got to know him through like a mutual friend, and the mutual friend was just saying like, hey, this is a guy that he's planning churches and capacities and all these things. And I'm like, oh man, that's cool. That's something that I had desired. It's like just to learn from someone, and specifically in the role of pastoring and shepherding people. And so they flew up to South Dakota to meet us, him and Andrew Spangler at the time, our executive pastor.
Yes.
And I just get to hear his heartbeat for like where he was in ministry and what he valued. And instantly there was just a connection. I'm like, man, like that's what I value, shepherding people. I value caring more about people than caring about building a big church. And so got down here and started meeting with him on a monthly basis and getting to see him as a man and some of the things and challenges that he's facing. And it's just cool to realize like we are similar in some areas, but like significantly different in others. And I tell people all the time, like he's one of the greatest men outside of eternity that I've ever been able to meet and fellowship with and learn from. And so, yeah, that's going to be a really good episode.
Oh, man. I got to work up the courage to ask him.
If you don't ask him, I'll tell him.
Yeah, and like the fact that he went up to South Dakota to meet you,
Yeah, speaks volumes.
instead of like usually it's you come to me. Yeah, and that just shows like God tells him do something.
He's obedient to it. And that's one thing that I've learned is just through him, like his obedience to what the Lord has told him to do and his faithfulness to do that has inspired me and encouraged me to do the same. So,
Well, when he was first interviewing for Turning Point, did he tell you how we did it?
yeah, he said that there were like a couple different candidates that they had come in
Yeah,
and like preach that Sunday type of a deal.
yeah, it felt like American Idol.
Yeah, okay. All right.
And Pastor Chuck was the only one we weren't there for.
Really?
Yeah, we went on vacation.
Oh, man.
And we come back and they're like, we got Pastor Chuck. And I'm like,
Who's that?
who's that? Like, because I really like, no offense, Pastor Chuck, I love you. But I like this one guy, I don't even remember his name. He was from California.
Yes.
I thought he did it great.
Wow.
And I'm glad it worked out. Like,
Yeah.
Pastor Chuck is great. I love that he doesn't hesitate. He just steps on those toes.
Yeah.
Like with this sermon series he's doing,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, stand firm.
and even the 3-parter he's in right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm like, oh, that takes a lot. And that was actually one of the questions I have been thinking about is as a pastor, especially for you have young adults.
Yeah.
Like that's tough.
Yeah, it can be. I think I think it becomes tough when you're not willing to get on their level and like speak to their felt needs versus like trying to generalize everything.
Yes.
And I think that's one area that I've had to grow in and have had the ability to grow in is, man, it's one thing to preach a sermon on Sunday to a vast group of people where like you're hitting all different ages, all different stages, all different seasons of life. And so you can be just a little bit more general,
Okay.
but like having to preach to young adults or encourage and disciple young adults, it's more honed in and more specific. And so because it's more specific and more honed in, you got to do more research and you got to figure out like, what are some of the challenges that they're facing today versus challenges that we used to face or that we never had to face. And so that's been one of those areas where like has been a little difficult at times, but has been rewarding when you do the work to like understand, hey, this is what they're facing. Like, that's why I was so thankful to Pastor Chuck when he opened up, you know, the biblical sexuality of like, this is something that young adults are facing. You know, what's wrong, what's acceptable, what's not. We live in such a sexualized world where we exploit the human body and so like for them, this is normal and natural. And so to bring in, you know, Paul and what he says to the Thessalonians, that seems so countercultural, and it is, but a lot of people aren't really willing to step into that and teach that out versus just like a quick snapshot opinion.
You did a great job leading to this question.
Mm-hmm.
I know you guys feel God telling you what to preach.
Yeah.
When it comes to a hard message, like this one.
Yeah.
Because that is hard, especially, as you said, it's very sexual in the world today.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even buy my daughter cut off shorts that aren't too inappropriate. Like,
No, for sure.
and so you struggle with, I got to make this hard sermon in front of these people, or do you just, I mean, I know you trust God, but
Yeah.
or are you going back and forth like, are you sure this is what you want me to say, God?
Yeah, I think so me naturally, I'm a person who, for better or worse, enjoys confrontation.
Oh,
So like I'm not afraid of confrontation. I actually prefer confrontation. Because over the years I've come to understand like a lot of it comes from saying things that everyone's thinking, but no one's willing to speak up about.
okay.
And then as we have the conversation, I'm not trying to get you to agree with me. I'm just trying to understand how you got to the conclusion you got to. So it makes it a little bit easier for me to step into those spaces. So when it comes to like quote unquote hard messages, I don't think the issue is, do I preach it? Don't I preach it? It's more so, how do I communicate this in a way that softens the blow, right? Because I don't ever want to communicate in such a way of like, well, you know better, or you should do this, or you're such an idiot for thinking that. Like, I never want to communicate in that way, but if I'm not careful, it can come off that way,
Yeah.
right? Because we do such a intensive, you know, research and studying the word and the context and the Greek and the Hebrew, because we're diving into these things, we want to be careful that like we're communicating in a plain way. Like I don't ever want to assume that someone is that they're privy to a certain knowledge that I have because I did a study on it.
Yes.
So like the way in which you communicate it, I think is more of the challenge of, I want to say what needs to be said. I want to say it with the force that comes with it. At the same time, I want to be mindful of who I'm talking to when I say this. So I think that's more of the challenge.
Okay. And then last question about ministry.
Yeah.
How you guys remember what you gotta say? Because not only that, like it's week to week. Like you got, okay. I mean, you got to take a mental break on Monday, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So I think,
Well, and yours is what, Tuesday?
Tuesday. Yeah. So it's funny because like the beginning of my week is Wednesday because the end of my week is Tuesday.
Okay.
But I think a lot of it comes down to preparation. Like I'm a firm believer in preparation. I feel like it's 100% my job to be prepared, but it's 100% God's job to do whatever he wants to do with the message.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, I'm not so much concerned with the results of something
Yes.
as much as I am like my responsibility to show up prepared for what, I'm supposed to preach on or say.
Okay.
And so a lot of that memorization comes from repetition, but then also too, a lot of the times when we preach, we're preaching from our own passions and felt needs, that it's not hard to remember that. Or like when we share a personal story, I don't have to write that out verbatim. Like I can just recall it in my mind. And so those moments seem as though it's like, why is he not like looking down at his notes, or why does it seem like that's coming second nature and natural to him? Because it is in some regards.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it comes down to repetition. That helps quite a bit.
Yeah. Okay. I was always curious about that because it's not like it's like a 3-minute paper you got to like. So, bravo to you guys.
You know, for sure.
Now we're gonna switch to a little sports.
Okay.
So you grew up in Long Beach.
Yep.
Does that mean you're a UCLA or USC fan?
So UCLA. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's interesting in that regard. So I feel like kind of like a bandwagoner to some degree,
Oh.
because when it comes to college basketball, UCLA is my team. Bruins through and through. When it comes to football, USC was my team. Right? I enjoyed Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, Lindell White. Like those were my guys. And so it just feels like, is that even allowed because they're rivals? That feels so wrong. But at the same time, like I can't help it. Like USC, man, football was just amazing growing up.
Well, and I think it you're not a bandwagon because you do have those two I mean, there's lots of universities in LA, but it's like the same.
Yeah, but they're not. I know. But think about it from this perspective. It'd be the equivalent of me saying like, yeah, when it comes to basketball, I love Tech, but when it comes to football, I'm a Longhorn. People were like, "Excuse me."
No, I get it. Like, I'm a fan.
Are you insane?
Yeah, but I think like it's different though because Austin's there,
True.
Tech's here.
Yeah, that's true. The distance does make up a huge part of that. But yeah, growing up, man, that's what I enjoyed. When it came to NBA, Lakers fan through and through.
Oh, I'm sorry.
For the longest time, football was like the hard one because growing up, the only team that we really had was the San Diego Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the equivalent of, like you said, Lubbock versus Austin.
Yeah.
So like San Diego, LA area, I mean, San Diego's 2 hours away from us. So we weren't jumping on that bandwagon. Then you have, the Oakland Raiders, and it's like, we don't want to jump on that bandwagon. And so for the longest time, I was a Seattle Seahawks fan.
Okay.
And the reason being is because Pete Carroll coached at USC,
Yep.
and then he moved to Seattle. I'm like, oh, that's my guy. And then when the Rams came back to LA, jumped on that bandwagon and been riding it ever since.
Yeah. See, my mom and dad from Michigan, so we're Michigan fans,
Okay.
Detroit fans, not Michigan State. Sorry. Let's clarify that.
You're Wolverine, huh?
Yes. But if Michigan State is playing anybody
Other than
we'll root for.
Gotcha.
So, and then I also became an Air Force fan just because we're stationed at the Air Force Academy.
Yep.
Got to go to their football games.
That's awesome.
If you go to a college football game, military academy,
Really?
it is so amazing. Cadets fly over.
And they're all in uniform, right?
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow.
I've been to a Michigan game. I mean, it was Michigan versus Air Force, but
Okay.
I walked because you can't park next to the stadium. You gotta walk.
Yeah.
Walk through the tailgates, And I've been to an Air Force Academy game. There is just nothing.
Really?
Nothing like it. It means more to them.
Mm.
Their brothers playing.
Yeah.
Like, they go on drills with that right guard.
Yep.
And so it's just,
Yeah, I never thought of it from that perspective. That's super cool.
and then if you can get it when Navy comes or Army comes, even better.
Wow.
Like, I love Michigan, Ohio State. Like, that's not the one.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like a Navy, Air Force, Navy, Army. Like
they're literally going to war.
yeah. And then, but at the same time, they're like, they love each other.
Yeah.
And then it's just, I don't know, it's, you got to experience it. And so,
That's awesome.
yeah. And my wife, she's from Lubbock.
Yeah.
She's a Tech fan. I feel like it's cheating on Michigan to like, like I tried. Like I tried.
Oh, that's funny.
And then my thing is, Tech fans, I get it. You guys aren't used to winning.
Oh,
Michigan is.
oh, he's stirring the pot.
And we went to the Tech game, me and Lauren.
Yeah.
And she was getting all dressed up fancy.
Yep.
And I'm over here in like gym shorts and a shirt.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, you can't wear that. I'm like,
It's a Tech game.
it's a football game. She's like, no. And you get there, everybody's dressed up.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what bugs me. It's like, y'all aren't there for the football. Like, y'all aren't there.
So you're saying it's more of a pageantry?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Like,
And I would say like one thing that I've learned about living in Lubbock is you don't talk about tech.
no, I know. But it doesn't matter. I'm going to stay true to who I am.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I think that was another like culture shock for us is like, because even in California, like you have your diehard fans, but not to like this degree where it almost feels like its own religion.
Yes,
And I use that word intentionally because it's like a form of worship.
it is.
And so I've never experienced anything like that where, you know, you have God and then you have, you know, tech like right underneath it. And it's different, right? Like I'm not here to bash it by any means, but it's just different.
Yes.
And so I get that where, man, everybody's getting dressed up in their Sunday best, so to speak, to go to the Tech game. And you're like, oh, okay, well, I don't see it that way, but yeah, more power to you.
And I'll watch them.
Yeah.
It is local. And we went to a baseball game. Like, that was fun. The kids enjoyed it. But it's like, it's hard.
Yeah.
I wanted to wear my Michigan hat.
But you wanted to make it out alive.
Yeah. Well, Michigan played Tech in baseball a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And I wore my Michigan gear.
Ooh, how'd that go for you?
I'm fine.
Nice.
My whole family dressed out in Michigan. Like,
So a question though, did Michigan win or did they lose?
oh, no, they lost.
Oh,
But we got the revenge in the World Series.
okay.
We knocked them out that year.
Gotcha.
And then we took Vandy to a game 3.
Nice. So you got your revenge.
Yeah. Now they got their revenge in basketball. Their defense that year, the year they went to the,
Oh,
Yeah.
yep.
and they held us like, I want to say like 40 points maybe.
Wow.
I mean, their defense is impressive,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it's hard. I can't. And then like Tom Brady. Okay. Michigan man.
Yep.
I don't like New England. I like Tom Brady.
Yeah.
We're Lion fans.
Hold on, though. You're a Tom Brady fan, and Tom Brady beat Pat Mahomes
It's
in the Super Bowl.
yeah, he did go blue.
So now, like, you got that kind of,
Oh
you
yeah,
know, bragging rights a little bit. Man,
Yeah.
you might be a dangerous man in Lubbock.
that's what it is. But no, it's like, I don't know. I like college more than the pros, just because.
Feels like there's something to play for.
Yeah, and now it's getting a little less than that because of.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get into that one today.
Yeah. No, I get you.
But yeah, we're Lions fans. We've been through the 0 and 16.
Yep.
And I watched them last year, just so close,
I know.
a helmet away.
Yeah, I literally thought they were going to pull it off. I thought it was going to be the Chiefs and the Lions in the Super Bowl.
And I was like, oh, we get the Chiefs for our beat on this. Let's do it again. Yeah, and so, but I love sports. So I'll watch it.
Yeah.
I've actually been watching more college women basketball lately.
Okay.
Not because of Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
It's just, it feels more like basketball now.
Gotcha.
Like, men, they're amazing. It's just pick and roll.
Yeah, I struggle to watch college basketball these days. Like, people ask me, you know, who'd you pick in your bracket? I was like, I didn't even do a bracket just because, like, the game itself is not enjoyable. I feel like they don't think through, like the game it's just all athleticism and like instinct. And again, like sometimes you get some highlight plays, but for the most part, it's just bad basketball.
Yeah.
Like it's just glorified pickup. And I'm like, I just don't have time for it.
Well, it's AAU in college now.
Oh yeah.
And so that's why I was like watching UConn and Iowa women.
Okay.
To watch them, like they were throwing out box one.
Yep.
I was like, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, and not only that, all 5 girls were running a play, not just sitting on 3-point line waiting.
Yeah, they were probably all involved in the play itself. Versus, like I said, just you got guys hanging out in the corner, no ball movement, no one knows how to cut, and just it's not fun.
So yeah, and then I watched Caitlin Clark in the championship, and South Carolina was definitely better. But I think UConn, if they didn't lose like 5 girls,
Yeah.
they probably beat South Carolina.
No, for sure.
But yeah, sports are like you. I don't watch that much college basketball, except for tournament, just the first day.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing like it. Like,
All the upsets.
yeah.
Somebody's going down, right?
And then there's always that one team that has that one 3-point shooter that everybody wants to like just keep shooting, man.
Yep.
Don't pass the ball. Shoot up.
Just launch it.
Just go for those 13 threes. Look up there. Keep them in it. So yeah, I'm more of I'll watch college football. I love it.
Yep.
I'll watch the Lions just because my family, like my brother that's right above me, he's really into the pros.
Okay.
And my dad really loves the Lions. So to have something to talk with,
Yeah.
I watch it. And then, but me and my oldest brother, college football.
Okay.
And the third one, he's more of a baseball fan.
Okay.
He's a Cubby.
Nice.
I don't know how he became a Cubs fan.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Never lived in
Michigan,
Chicago.
yeah.
He's actually the only one born in Michigan out of us 4.
Really
Yes.
interesting.
So he always likes to, like, we're talking about Michigan. He's like, hey, you're the one that was born there. Like, I didn't have a choice. Like, my oldest was born in Delaware.
Okay.
The second oldest was in Michigan. The third oldest was in Turkey.
Oh wow.
Yes.
Were they overseas for military?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I was in Homestead, south of Miami.
Okay.
And they always talk about how cool it was to live over there. And I was like, why'd you stop?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I get on this earth, and you're like, no, we're good.
Our adventures are over with.
Yeah. I mean, not only that, they were in Miami, and then they take us to Idaho.
Yeah, that's really polar opposite.
But it was great. I mean,
Have you ever seen yourself living outside of Lubbock?
so yeah, I only moved here because my wife.
Okay.
She was like, I'm not moving to New Mexico.
Yep.
I was like, oh, I love you. I'm coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I thought about it. It's hard though, just because the older 2 kids, their dad's still in Lubbock.
Gotcha.
And so you don't want to take that away from,
No, for sure.
but definitely think about it. I love Colorado.
Yeah?
I love the mountains. My wife loves the beach, so I don't know. She'll probably win. I talk a tough game, but I can't turn her down.
That's funny.
How about you?
Yeah, like we don't know where the Lord's going to lead us. But yeah, well, we love Colorado, but just because of the homeschooling system. So my wife homeschools all 4 of her kids.
Today?
Yeah, so because of Colorado's kind of restrictions on a homeschool, she doesn't want to move to a place like that. Even though, like, living in South Dakota, Colorado's 6.5 hours away, we would travel there, go on family trips and stuff like that. Very beautiful place. Obviously, different culture from Lubbock.
Yes.
And it's evident the moment you step into Colorado.
You don't like all the bucket here.
Yeah, no kidding. So that place, I've always wanted to move back to California, but just it's not feasible, and it just doesn't make sense culture-wise for my kids and all that they know, and exposing them to that. I have always dreamt of living in Tennessee.
Okay.
Don't know if that'll ever come to fruition.
What part of Tennessee?
Well, we looked at Memphis a couple times, but obviously just the crime rate and things of that nature. And then I've looked at Charleston, South Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
I think that could be cool.
I still go visit there.
Yeah. So there's places that, like, of course, you always want to join and live and experience, but we're just kind of open to whatever God wants to do in our lives.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, we've learned, you make plans and God laughs at them. So,
Right. I had plans to retire as a teacher and counting down the years.
yeah.
He's like, no.
Yeah, not a chance.
It's like, okay. So, no, that's awesome. I didn't realize South Dakota and Colorado, 6 hours. That's funny because you'd still be in Texas.
Yeah, no kidding. He'd be in, Fort Worth or just a little bit past it?
Well, it's like this morning, my oldest, she's going to, I want to say it's State DECA.
Okay.
I don't know. She's in so many things. She had to be at the school at 2:30 in the morning
Oh, dear God. Why?
because they're going to Galveston.
Oh, gotcha.
And she's still on the bus.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm just like, we couldn't have just left the day early.
Yeah, no kidding. That sounds brutal.
And I was telling Lauren, I was like, I'll do it. And I'll just stay up. And then you just take the other 2 kids to school and let me sleep in.
Yeah.
And she did. But you're still in that mindset of, you got to wake up. And I heard her and I was like, how's it go? So, yeah, it's funny how big Texas is. And you don't realize it until you're driving.
Yeah.
Well, and the other state that you don't realize is big, Florida.
Really?
Because you
I
got,
guess so long.
well, not only that, you got the panhandle.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
If you get into Florida, like I remember driving as a little kid, and you're like, welcome to the Sunshine State.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh, we're almost at Disney. And your mom's like, no, we got like 8 hours left.
Oh, my goodness.
Because you got to go all the way and then all the way halfway down. And I'm like,
Oh, wow.
we're in Florida though. So it's actually, even part of Florida is in our time zone.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
It's insane how big the United States is, and we don't even realize it.
Golly.
Well, it's funny because most people ask, and when I tell them I'm from New Mexico, they're like, oh, you're from Mexico?
Like, no, those are two different things.
Yeah. And I even had family, like, my cousins in Michigan. They're like, how's it living in a different country? I'm like, what country?
Yeah.
They're like, New Mexico. I'm like,
It's still in the United States.
yeah. But in Michigan, they sell tumbleweed.
They sell?
Yeah, they make them into, no, man, the tumbleweeds are nothing up there.
Oh, my goodness.
And it's like $300 for,
Oh, man, I think I just found my new side hustle.
there you go. And it's funny because my parents, their house in House, New Mexico, it's kind of out in the, it's like this.
Okay.
Okay, there'd be a school right where the church is, and then we're across the street is our house.
Okay.
And everything else at that point is just field. It's just pasture, open range. Well, tumbleweeds. They woke up one day, look out their front door, and they have a half circle driveway.
Okay.
Tumbleweeds are blocking them in, taller than me.
Oh, my goodness.
They were getting ready to leave to go on a cruise in Galveston. My dad had to like dig it out for just the car to get there.
Oh, God.
And so we went down on, like we do, we went to Christmas and everybody's there. And it's super windy like Lubbock. But
Okay.
I think it's more windy because Cap's house is like 10 miles from the Cap
Okay.
on that side of it. And the wind just brings it. Well, I woke up and I take pictures of my mom, but sends of all the tumbleweed. I look out the window, I'm like, Mom, I think you're lying. I have breakfast, I go look out again, and it's there. So me and my brother spent the day just clearing it out, and then they cut down the fence, and that really helped blow it, just keep it going. But it's crazy how many tumbleweeds are.
Yeah, that's insane. Like, I knew what they were, but I don't think I realized, especially moving to Lubbock, like, how real they are. Just because of, the only time that you would see them outside of this continent was like in Western,
Yes.
or in the desert or something along the lines of that. You're just like, oh, okay, like, that's cool. And then I remember moving here and I went and got them going, and you're like, that's a tumbleweed going across the road.
And not only that, they hurt when they come take you out because they're big and sturdy. Like, you ever hit one with your car?
Yes.
You're like, oh my gosh, did I break it?
Yeah.
And stuff. Yeah, when I would go home at college, because Portales is only, I went to Eastern New Mexico, and Portales, and it's only an hour away from the house. Yeah. There'd be tumbleweed coming. This little one, like, it looked like a river. And I was driving a 1990 Ford Escort hatchback.
Oh, geez.
Had the automatic seat. I love those automatic seats.
Yeah.
And 2.3 liter. That sucker could not go anywhere. And these tumbleweeds, I'm sitting in this car and they're above my head, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna die today.
Golly.
So yeah, people don't understand. Tumbleweeds are a real issue here.
No, they are. They are for sure.
So, well, thank you, Isaiah, for joining me on this walk
Yeah.
and talk. It was a pleasure listening to you and getting to know you a little more.
Yeah. Thanks for having me out, man. This has been fun. Like I said, I got my workout in my camp. I probably won't be able to get out bed tomorrow, but it'll be worth it.
Yeah.
Wow, what a walk and talk me and Isaiah just had. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story with me and the listeners. Join us next week as we have Stace Jones from the Christian Preschool Centers as we walk and talk.
Let's not waste time. We'll take this slow. We've got miles behind us, but miles to go. So let's just break this down to the simplest truth.